Hello Synthwaver, Alonzo here. Today I'm going to show you how to create a sync lead that sounds like this. Let's get to it. A sync lead, or oscillator sync lead, is a very nice sound to be able to synthesize, and because it has a very particular character that I'm sure you've heard on countless synthwave records. This patch that I just previewed for you is included in the Synthwave Dojo GR8 sound bank that's available for free at synthwavedojo.com/downloads, and specifically I was playing the SD lead sync patch, but today I'm going to show you how to create it from scratch or something very similar. Alright, so let's head into the preset tab, then user, and let's call up the SD init mono. This is how it currently sounds. Let me bring the level down just a little bit. Okay, first of all, what is oscillator sync? If you have two or more oscillators in a synthesizer, they will typically be free running. Imagine each of my hands is an oscillator, and each is starting and stopping their cycle independently of the other. And typically, this is fine and dandy when you're making patches. There's nothing wrong with this. But in certain scenarios that I'm not going to go into today, it's very useful to sync both oscillators so they start and stop at the same time. So today, for this kind of sound that we're going for, we need to synchronize both oscillators. Okay, so here on GR8, what we do is simply activate this button called sync. And now let me deactivate it for a second. And here we have two oscillators going on at the same time. Both of them are set to sawtooth wave, and this is how it sounds. Listen to what happens when I activate the sync button. Nothing special happened, right? Behind the scenes, back to our example of the two oscillators free running, when we activate the sync button, one of the oscillators will turn into the slave or the follower of another oscillator. That other oscillator will be called the master or the leader. Okay, so again, when we activate the sync, what will happen is that both oscillators are free running, but when oscillator 1 or the master or the leader restarts his cycle, wherever oscillator 2 or the follower or the slave was, it will now reset and follow oscillator 1. So it can move independently during its cycle, but once oscillator 1 restarts, oscillator 2 will restart as well. And like I showed you, there's nothing particularly attractive or different about the sound, just that every time that I hit a key, it sounds the same as opposed to this. Hear how there's a little bit of phasing going on, and that's fine because the oscillators are running in different times. We get that phasing sound. Okay, cool. With the sync, now both are going to start at the same time, and it's important that in this case, we need to understand which oscillator is the master and which oscillator is the slave. Here on Future Tone, when I activate the sync button, oscillator 2 will become the slave or the follower of oscillator 1. Great. Now, another important thing is that for this kind of sound, I don't want to hear oscillator 1 in the mix. Oscillator 1 is only going to control oscillator 2, restart the cycle of oscillator 2, but I don't want to hear it. That's why I'm going to turn my mix knob all the way to the right, 100% oscillator 2, because I don't want to listen or hear oscillator 1. Great. Then still nothing out of the ordinary. Where the magic happens is when we activate the sync function, but then sweep the pitch of the slave, in this case oscillator 2, with an LFO or with an envelope, and we'll get that characteristic metallic-y, sharp sound. All right, for our patch, what we'll do is assign envelope 1 to sweep the pitch of oscillator 2. And we'll do that here in the pitch section by turning up the knob oscillator 1 and then setting the destination of this modulation source to oscillator 2. Let's take a listen once more. Right there, that's the characteristic oscillator sync sound. Right there, I'm sure you've heard plenty of tracks that use this kind of thing. There's a very famous track by The Cars. Don't remember the name right now. I should have looked it up for the video. But in any case, the lead goes something like this. Wrong notes, but you get the gist of it. There's also a very well-known Daft Punk track, Robot Rock. I can't play it at speed, but it goes something like this. And right there, that's the oscillator sync sound. Now from here, we have envelope 2 controlling the amp and envelope 1 controlling the oscillator sync or the sweeping of our slave oscillator. And there's many things we can do here, and with very tiny changes, we'll get a lot of a difference in the character of our sync lead. First of all, let's say, let's increase the decay of the sweep. Cool. It's now like falling. Right? What if I make it faster? Very cool sound as well. Okay, then what if we made the attack a little bit slower, like so? It opened up the decay. Nice. Let's open it up a little more. Nice. Even slower attack. I really like this sweeping sound, very sharp and very quick. Almost sounds like an engine revving. Okay, what if we did, what if we made the decay even longer? Or shorter? Very interesting sounds, right? Let's bring it back to here. Let's increase the decay a little bit more. Okay, right there. And if we were to increase the release on the amp and also on the envelope 1, as we release the key and playing and releasing very quickly, the sound will continue going on. Nice. So definitely, if we used a release keys approach for the amp by bringing the sustain all the way down, increasing the release, and increasing the decay on the amp, I just simply tap the keys on my MIDI controller. The sound goes on. Cool, right? So this is our basic sound, and there's many things we can do. Let's experiment with effects. For example, chorus. What are the usual suspects? Very nice texture, very spacey. Cool. Of course, delay. A lot of delay, because we love delay. Very nice sound. Of course, reverb, a lot of reverb. We also love reverb. Reverb. And we can also add phaser. Very cool. And instead of chorus, maybe flanger. For an even more spacey and wacky kind of sound, but let's leave it set to chorus without the phaser. Okay. From here, we can experiment with setting the oscillator voicing to unison. Right now, it's mono. But what if we activated unison? We get a thicker tone. And if we gave this thing a little bit of glide, a little bit more maybe. Too much. Cool. Let's bring it down, and because we're in unison mode, we can use the detune to change the quality. The more detuned, the more wacky and spacey it sounds. And if we bring it down, it sounds more metallic-y. But right here, it sounds very cool. But right here, it's very cool. If we weren't using delay, reverb, and chorus, that introduces stereo into our mono sound, when we activate unison and use the spread knob, we get a stereo sound. So if we want stereo but not use chorus or reverb and delay, we can simply use the spread knob to help us out. But if we're using chorus, reverb, and delay, it's not too noticeable what we're doing with the spread knob. Yeah, we can kind of hear it, but it's not as dramatic as when those stereo effects are applied. Cool. Okay, so that's unison mode. Let's switch back to mono. Oh, let me bring the glide back down. Okay, so far, we haven't been using the filter. The filter is completely open. We could set the slope to 24 dB per octave, and we can bring down the cutoff just to make the sound a little darker. Very nice. And of course, we could control the filter cutoff by using the envelope control here. Right now, it's set to be controlled by envelope 1, so let's give it a little bit of modulation amount here and see where we are. Nice. Of course, we can increase the resonance to make it even more spacey. Very nice. And finally, we could also experiment with setting our oscillator to a different kind of waveform besides sawtooth. So what if we set it to a pulse? Very nice. Very different than sawtooth. And here on GR8, we can modulate the pulse width with this control. So we can set it to a static position manually when it's set to control using this knob. And notice how the character is different. Or we can set the pulse width to be modulated via the LFO or envelope 1. Let's try it out with envelope 1. Cool. What about the LFO? Here we have our LFO set to sine wave. Let's increase the rate. Nice. It introduces a little bit of like a wobbliness in there. Alrighty, my friends, so now you know how to create this kind of Synthwave. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.